يستوي الذين يعلمون والذين لا يعلمون إنما يتذكر أولو الألباب.
العلم يحلو كلما كررته ولذاك عدت مكررا لحلاوة.
So he begins by saying Kitab al-Tahara. Note that when they say Kitab al-Tahara, they actually mean Kitab Ahkam al-Tahara or Kitabun fi Ahkam al-Tahara. Tamam, the chapter or the book of the rulings, the verdicts, the Sharia laws in regards to Tahara. He starts here by saying لا يصح رفع الحدث ولا إزالة النجس إلا بما يسمى ماء. Hadath is the state of impurity. It's the state that requires you to make wudu or ghusl. Najas means actual filth on you or the residue of it on you and so on. Each one of these words contain more details. Hadath, for example, could require a wudu, could require a ghusl. And there's different types. Najas can require a simple sprinkle of water versus actually washing, all the way up to washing something 7 times with dirt included. So hadath with all of its types, najas with all of its types, in order to remove the state of impurity or to remove the filth off of you or your clothes or off of something, you need that which is referred to as water. If, meaning water, were to change in one of its characteristics, taste, color, smell, a change that impacts it to the extent where you can no longer call it water, okay, and let's just say that it's mixed with something that is tahir, clean, that is not naturally found within the water or with the water, then you cannot utilize that water for purification. This is important, especially that part where it says it's not normally found within the water, so that way we can include the difference between, river water versus ocean water and things of that nature. والتغير التقديري كالتغير الحسي. There's 2 types of change that we look at. One change is something that you can recognize with color, taste, or smell. Another is this color, taste, and smell is not noticeable. However, you know that it took place. So you would consider as if it were, or as if it did, and then you would do a mental experiment to determine whether that water has changed or not. So he gives us an example of that. He says, ma'wad, rose water, flavored water basically, right? That its smell of that flavor, of that ingredients added to the water has lost its efficacy. You know it was there. You know it was added. So imagine someone squeezed a few lemons and put it into the water. But it sat out for a day. So the lemony smell, the lemony flavor went away. You know that it went in. You have certainty of that. What does it do to that water? Well, you can guesstimate, as we say, right? If that had its full efficacy present when it was poured to water, would it have changed it? Yes? Then you can't use that water for removing the state of impurity or removing filth off of you or your clothes. قدر مخالفا له بأوسط الصفات. And you can utilize other things, right? Mid-level things to determine whether that substance would have changed that water. Some of them will say, well, you could use, for example, the color of a juice versus, or for the smell, you could add something stronger, maybe something that has a really strong fragrance to it, basil, right? And we're not going extreme, because when we get to this segment on filth, we'll see that they'll say when you're guesstimating, doing that mental experiment, you're going to use extreme things. So we'll look for smell, something like ammonia and things like that. But when we're talking about something clean, like lemon, right? We don't have to utilize extreme examples. Minor change, a little bit of a lemon was squeezed over a bucket of water. It doesn't really impact it. So that will not impact us calling that water in that bucket water. And whose opinion are we seeking when we say it's called water? We're seeking the linguists. We're not speaking the average person. Okay. Change that happens from water just sitting, whether it's outside or inside. Sometimes the flavor will change a little bit. That does not impact the water, so you can still use that water. Dirt thrown into the water does not impact the water. Imam al-Ramli says even if that dirt was used for tayammum, as you're probably well aware, is that we don't utilize ma' musta'mal for our tahara, for our wudu or ghusl. Okay, well, what about dirt that was used for tayammum? Could we use that? Imam al-Ramli, as opposed to Imam ibn Hajar, says yes, even if that. But that's just vegetation found within the water itself. وَمَا فِي مَقَرِّهِ وَمَمَرِّهِ, that which is in the path of water or at the bottom of the water. Now, whether that's naturally there or made there. وَلَا بِمُجَاوِرٍ, something that's next to water, sitting in the water that doesn't actually mix with the water. However, its presence leaves some sort of effect. Like, say you had a bucket of water and you put an incense stick in it. You might smell into the bucket and it smells like the incense. But once you remove that stick of incense, it goes away. أو دهن, something oily was dropped into the water. You see its effect, but once you take it out, the water goes back to normal. So these things don't affect the water permanently. وَلَا بِمِلْحٍ مَائِي, I mentioned that, the ocean, right? It's salty. There's that change as opposed to your drinking water does not impact the validity of using that water. As opposed to salt that's not found within the water, like that's found in mountains and things like that. وَلَا بِوَرَقٍ تَنَاثَرَ مِنَ الشَّجَرِ, leaves falling off of a tree into the water, as opposed to its fruit. The fruit falling into the water would impact, but the leaves, it doesn't. You can just remove the leaves. And that's the basic dissecting of this paragraph. Now, bear in mind, there's a lot of details packed within that we can unpack. This is why on this book you find, some of the ulama have explanations that are this big, while some others like Imam al-Kurdi did a big sharh, a medium sharh, and a small sharh. So there's different ways to break this down. What I'm doing here is that we're focusing on the explicit because our goal is to come to our numbering. Let's read through the numbering of the masail that we just covered right now in this paragraph. Number 1. And at the end, inshallah ta'ala, I'll have the list of these masail on the screen so you can take them down for your notes, inshallah ta'ala. Number 1, to remove the state of impurity, you need ma. Ma what? Ma mutlaq. Water that is normally referred to as water, and we call that in our method referred to as ma mutlaq. Number 2, to remove filth, you're going to need ma mutlaq. Number 3, ma mutlaq is water that is referred to and known as water without any changes that have happened to it. Number 4, we look at 3 characteristics to determine our ability to use that water, and that's the color, the taste, and the smell. And that's how we identify change. Number 5, when we say change, we just mean one of them. We don't mean all 3 need to have changed. So it could be the color, could be the taste, could be the smell. Number 6, in order for change to take effect, it has to be change that completely impacts the nature of that water, meaning we no longer refer to that as water. Number 7, the change that we are looking for is change that would impact the name and the nature of that liquid. Number 8, change could be with something that is clean, it could be with something that is filthy. If it is something clean, we are simply saying you can't make wudu with it, but it's still clean water or clean juice at this point or flavored water. So Number 9, so if the thing that has fallen and mixed into the water is filthy, then the water is obviously filthy and no longer, you can't use it or drink it. Number 10, the estimated changes are treated exactly like physical changes that you can actually see. Number 11, the estimated change, right, the one that we do a mental experiment with, okay, we're going to utilize something in place of the color, taste, and smell. It's also only used, right, when something's that substance no longer has its features that we can identify it with. That's when we use the estimation or the guesstimation. Number 12, when we are doing that mental experiment, we're using mid-level things that have a mid-level presence of color, taste, and smell. Nothing too extreme, as we're going to see in the chapter of filthiness, that we will use things that are extreme in their color, taste, and smell. That was number 13. I put that there, that when we do the test for the filthy things, we're going to use things that are strict, things that are harsh, things that are strong. We said, like, when it comes to the odor, we'll use things like ammonia, right? Number 14, minor change that does not impact what we call that liquid. I mean, if it's still called water, like I said an example, I had a bucket of water and a lemon was squeezed over it. Didn't change any of the features. It wasn't enough to impact the water as a whole, so you can still use that water. Number 15, change as any stagnated water, that because the water sat there for too long, does not impact the water. We can utilize that because most of the time there's no way around that, right? There's no way to keep the water from changing. If you leave water in a bottle of water for a day, its flavor will change. You can still make wudu from that. Number 16, even if dirt was thrown into water, it's not coming up because it's going to set at the bottom anyway at the end of it. Well, what if that dirt was used for tayammum? Imam al-Ramli said it's okay. And there's a funny discussion within the school on what do we consider dirt? Do we consider it mujawir or mukhalit? Mujawir would be like the incense example that I mentioned earlier. And the mukhalit would be something that mixes with water, like when you squeeze a lemon in. There's a debate within the school on that. And the reason why is that once you throw dirt in, it takes a while for it to set on the bottom. So while the particles of the dirt are still up and mixed and on the top of the water, can you use the water? This is a matter of discussion. At the end of the day, they all agree that eventually it's going to set on the bottom, and then therefore you can use the water. Vegetation that's found within the water does not impact the water itself unless someone threw it in, tossed it in, meaning it wasn't naturally from it or was from it and was taken out. And this really becomes a problem if it had dried out or was made into some sort of powder where it could mix potentially with the water. 18, changes that happen within the bottom of the water. They, like if there was certain types of stones or metals and things like that at the bottom of water, that does not impact the water, whether it was naturally there or artificially put there. Same thing for the passage, that's 19. If some of that is in the passage of the water, in a channel of the water, it does not impact the water. If something that does not mix with the water, but it's there in the water, and while it's present, it's causing an effect, once you remove that, then the effect goes away. So that would be like a oud, right? Like a stick of incense in water, and I already explained that. That was 20. 21, if something that is oil-based, oil doesn't mix with water, but while something that is an oil-based product is in there, it might seep out. But once you remove it, that change that it was causing goes away. Then you can just remove that out and wait for the water to go back to how it was. Number 22, salt water, salt that's coming from the ocean, for example, does not impact the usage of that water. We have the famous hadith, هو الطهور ماؤه الحل ميتته, where it's actually saying that you can use ocean water. So that salt there found in the ocean water does not impact the status of the water because that's where it's naturally found. As opposed to if I got drinkable water and then I put salt in it, that will not be the same as ocean water. No, you couldn't use that for wudu. So if you have 2 buckets that are salt water, one is salt that you got out of your cabinet, the other one's from the ocean. You can use the one from the ocean, you can't use the one from the salt from your cabinet. Number 23, trees that are by the water, the leaves falling down, leaves themselves, they're mujawir. You just take them out so that you don't really have to worry about that unless it was outside and someone put it in, dried out, and then now you're talking about possibility of something mixing with the water, so it's a little bit different. Okay, so those are your primary masail. Now, here in my notes, I added, that's 5 more points that are briefly understood from the text. Okay, I added them for clarity purposes only, but they're not stated verbatim or explicitly, in the paragraph itself. So number 24, now we understood from the paragraph, right, that there's 2 types of things that are going to mix or enter into the water, a mujawir and a mukhalit. If I drop my pen into the water, that's mujawir. All I have to do, let's just say it's causing some sort of effect on the water, I take my pen out, I'm done. The water goes back to normal quickly. And then there's something that mixes with the water, like dropping tea leaves into water. You can't separate the 2, it becomes tea, whether you like it or not. So that's number 24, and I said it if you want to write it in your notes. علمنا بما سبق انقسام التغير لمخالط لا يمكن فصله كالقهوة, like coffee, والشاي, tea, ومجاور يمكن فصله, and something that just sits in the water, doesn't really mix with it, كالزيت, like oil. Number 25, again, these last 5, as I said, these are masail that I added on, but they're important, they connect to it, it's understood from it, ulama expand on it, and I'm trying to keep us explicitly to the masail in the book, so that way at the end of the book you can make yourself a notebook, writing down all of these points, and you have all of the masail of المقدمة الحضرمية memorized. You know the quantity of masail that you studied, so when you listen to this and you end the video, you actually can say, oh, I have a database of knowledge. I left today with 28 fiqh masail. Now you can quantify your knowledge. You can organize your thoughts. You can know what you know in fiqh. Instead of it being a set of random ideas in your head, you can actually say, no, I took my first class. Well, what did you cover in your first class? 28 fiqh masail. 28 fiqh masail in the first class. And every class, inshallah ta'ala, every recording, you're going to end it with knowing exactly the number of masail and any additional masail that were added onto the paragraph. By the time we finish this text, inshallah ta'ala, every section, you're going to have a number of masail. And bi'idhnillah ta'ala, we're working on getting this printed for you, so that way you could have that list with you, inshallah ta'ala. And the beauty of this is that you can actually come at the end of the book and say, I learned this amount of masail from المقدمة الحضرمية, listening to recordings online, and you don't have to necessarily stick to my sharh. You can go listen to other people's shuruh. But having the list of masail will make you excel in fiqh. And most students, they spend years trying to study fiqh and cannot organize the thoughts. They know random fiqh masail. Excuse me. They know random fiqh masail. And they're unable to actually get their thoughts organized so they can say, this is what I know. This is what I've studied. No. Most brothers, sadly, they go around saying, I studied this book, I studied this book. I could ask them a question from that book, and they have no idea about it. They're completely clueless on what I ask. It's not because they didn't study. They did study it. But the problem is that they did not find a way to organize that which they know. And going back is not fun. And memorizing books is hard. So in between the lines, many fiqh masail just fall out and they never retain them. Now they can, inshaAllah ta'ala. And this way, I personally have found great success in retaining fiqh, especially. Because fiqh is all about scenarios, right? And I've seen great results from many students of knowledge, even beginner students, they finish المختصر الصغير, they get into المقدمة الحضرمية, and they're so strong in fiqh, they're even stronger than me. Wallah alhamdulillah. Number 25. If you are in doubt whether the substance is mujawir or mukhalid, does it mix with it or not, then we within the school by default give it the ruling of mujawir. Why? Because if it mixes with water, it's going to be pretty evident. The fact that you're in doubt shows that that substance that you're worried about is not showing clear enough signs. So we just simply, when in doubt, go and say it's mujawir. Okay, that means the substance has fallen into the water but doesn't actually mix with the water. Okay, 26, if a person's in doubt, if the change is too much and it impacts its name, or they don't know if it mixed or it's just sitting there, or they don't know if that is naturally found within the water or not, or they're not sure if that substance is tahir or najis, push all your doubt out the window and use the water. Push all of your doubt out the window and use the water. Number 27. If you remove that substance that wasn't fully mixing but impacting the water and you're not sure, can I use the water now or no? Or you had a bucket of water, there was a little bit of change, you added water to it, and you can't tell, did the change that I felt was there is gone now or not? Like, I'm not sure. What do I do? Imam al-Ramli said, when you're uncertain like that, go ahead and use the water, you're fine. Ibn Hajar said, no, because the first state here is that you couldn't use the water. Something happened and you're waiting for the water to go back to its original state so you can use it. If you're uncertain of that, then it remains in its original state of you being unable to use it. That's called what? That's going back to the original, goes back to Qaid al-Fiqhiyya, and what he's doing is that since I'm in doubt, I'm going to keep it in its original state, and its original state is I couldn't use it, so I still can't use it. Imam al-Ramli said, well, I took the steps needed. If I'm uncertain, if I can't make up my mind, then more than likely it's not giving me a feature of change, so now I can use it. There's a difference of opinion. And when it comes to Ibn Hajar and Ramli, we usually say both opinions would be part of the standardized opinions, meaning they're both opinions of the Shafi'i school. And number 28, when we are saying something is naturally found in the water, we mean something that you normally can't take out or away from the water ecosystem. It's just part of it. No matter what you do, they don't separate. Like vegetation in and around the water. It's naturally there. If you take it away, it will come back. Normally. That's just part of those ecosystems. And that's what we refer to as al-istighna. So I said, وَقَضِيَةُ الْإِسْتِغْنَاءِ أَنَّ الْمُؤَثِّرْ إِنْ كَانَ لَا يَسْتَغْنِي الْمَاءَ عَنْهُ تَوَاجُدًا. Naturally it's there. لِمَشَقَّةِ صَوْنِهِ عَنِ الْمَاءِ فَهُوَ لَا يُؤَثِّرْ. And as long as it is proven and understood that that is part of the water, and you cannot take that out of the water, cannot take that out of the ecosystem of the water, then guess what? Then it has no impact on the status of the water. So change from it wouldn't impact my ability to use it for wudu or ghusl or izalat an-najasa. And that is everything that concerns that paragraph. وأقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله تعالى لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
كلما كررته ولذاك عدت مكررا